All right, Sam. So welcome to the show. Introduce yourself to everybody.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, so my name is Sam. I run a company called Mad Gear. The main function of Mad Gear is to provide everyday people with emergency preparedness tools specifically for planning. So we have a couple different products. We make a contingency planner, which is a guided planner system that helps people make plans for emergencies. And then we have an app called Ready Plan. And that just takes the idea from the planner and digitizes it so that people can make plans more effectively and distribute them digitally. We also dabble in communications. So I have a background as a communications officer in the Navy. So a lot of that influence makes its way into Mad Gear. So we talk a lot about off-grid communications and ways to replace communications options if the main ones go down.
Right. So obviously you are, both feet into the preparedness world. What does preparedness mean to you?
Yeah, so I like to take a little bit of a different approach than a lot of people take. So a lot of people look at gear for preparedness, and that's their main approach. I like to look at it from a planning perspective. So I know that that's not necessarily the sexiest way to look at preparedness. I know a lot of people, knives, guns, and the apocalypse. That's all I want to talk about, right? But
Right.
we like to just look at the basics, and that is, can you make a plan that applies to the situations you will actually face? And can you distribute it to the people that need to know the plan? And can you execute that plan under pressure? So to me, those three things make up true preparedness.
So if you would just kind of break down for me, what is a basic preparedness plan for a suburban family of four?
Yeah. So I like to look at these plans for preparedness from their subcomponents. And let me explain that. If we're facing something like severe weather, the impacts of severe weather are going to be something like potentially a power outage. Okay, let's take something else, maybe a wildfire or maybe a hurricane. There's all sorts of different things you could face, but for the most part, what you end up seeing is a couple things pop up: power outages, evacuations, and communications outages. So, for a family of four, in a suburban setting, I would challenge them to look at those three things because they will apply to so many different things. So if you have a good evacuation plan, if you have a power outage plan, and if you have some sort of backup communications plan, those can fit into a bunch of different scenarios. So instead of a top three scenarios, I like to look at it as a top three antidotes, if that makes sense, or top three
Okay.
subcomponents that you can face.
Sure. You talked about evacuation just a second ago, and a lot of people
Yeah.
are very hesitant to try to leave their homes,
Yeah.
whether it's a hurricane or a wildfire or something like that. Is there a threshold for you where you would tell somebody, okay, now is the time to leave?
That's a great question. So my threshold for evacuation would probably be either you are already prepared to evacuate, so you've made a plan in the past, and there's a threat that's actually going to impact your specific area. And I think a good example to look at as a counterpoint to that, though, is tornadoes, right? A lot of people
Mm,
so I lived in Oklahoma
yeah,
for a while. Uh,
right.
Tornadoes are not something you typically evacuate for, but a hurricane is something you evacuate. So what's the difference there? I think that people tend to harden themselves to tornadoes in their specific areas because they're way more localized, right? So like a
Sure.
tornado
Oh,
can
yeah.
have a
Yeah.
specific strip that it actually like you don't have to evacuate a wide swath of people. So I think that's something else important to consider is that people in Oklahoma aren't evacuating for tornadoes, but people in Florida are evacuating for hurricanes. So
Mhm.
it's going to, I think, depend on how localized the incident is and if it's being pitched to you by the local authorities. I think that that's the one that I would stick to is if local authorities are telling you, hey, you need to get out of here, you should probably listen. But
Yeah.
if you don't have if you don't have like stuff already if you don't have a 72-hour go bag, if you don't already have something you can throw in the car and get away, it's going to be a little more painful than it would have been
Sure.
otherwise.
Yeah.
But there are some situations we could consider where you might not even get that warning. You might not get the
Mm,
luxury of somebody telling you, "Hey, this is something that could happen." So a family will have to develop their own triggers, which is the way I refer to this, is specifically
sure.
like your triggers. Um, in this case, in my family, the trigger would be, do I have a better place to go to? And is there something that I think is going to specifically threaten me in in a way that I'm not prepared to handle in this location? And it's very dynamic to come up with the answer to that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then, of course, you could always go by the Waffle House index, and if they are closing Waffle
Yeah.
Houses near you, you need to get out. That is a
Yes.
good trigger there.
Yeah. You know what? I bet there's a Twitter account. I
Oh,
got to
there's
look
gotta
into
be.
this. Yeah, there's got to be somebody out there who is pushing out these Waffle House index numbers. I'm not sure if it's actually Waffle House itself or somebody on Twitter who's watching these types of things, but that would be a great emergency, like an emergency action network or something like that. Like, hey, a Waffle House just closed 20 miles away from you. You need to get out of here. Like, oh,
Yeah, you
oh
get
man,
a
that's
text you
that's the
sign up for
sign.
text messages. Yeah, no, like,
Yeah.
you can actually go they have an interactive map on the Waffle House site, and you can
Okay.
actually click on, like, near me, and then click on it and see, if your restaurants are open and that sort of thing. But, yeah, no, having, like, an alert to my location to say, "Hey, the Waffle House by the interstate is closed down, the zombies are coming." That would be
Yeah.
useful, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So there's a lot of times that when we as adults try to prepare for, whatever life is going to throw at us, it can sometimes bring about a lot of anxiety for adults and also for kids. What's that balance of preparedness versus anxiety versus preparation? Kind of help me out with that.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I think it's going to come down to, this is my opinion on this, is family leadership, right? So
Hmm.
from my experience in the military, if you are if you're the guy in charge of your, say, crew, or you're leading like a bunch of people and you're afraid and you're nervous and you're anxious, they're going to say, oh geez, if he's afraid, like, I maybe I should be afraid too, right? They'll reflect that energy back at you.
Hmm.
So I like to think of it as like, lead with competence, lead with
Hmm.
like, hey, we've got this, we have a plan, we're going to execute this. If you're afraid, it might be best to suppress that if possible, and that's not easy. I'll say that's
Oh,
definitely not an easy
sure.
thing to
Yeah.
do. But in my experience, the thing that can help suppress that is having something that is orchestrated and exercised. So that gets into my next point, is that if what you are executing is something that is normal, short, it's not a something that's belabored necessarily, then it can be less shocking. So like every other month or something, we do one quick run through of putting our go bags into the car and driving to a rally point. Or say every time we drive to our grandparents' house, we like do it in such an organized way that it seems very structured and normal. When in reality, it could just be a dress rehearsal for an evacuation. Like, we
Yeah.
load the car, here we've got the checklist, we're doing all our things. Okay, we have a timeline, within this, like, we have to leave within 15 minutes of doing this thing. If you kind of practice in that type of way, if you ever needed to evacuate, it could just seem like another trip to the grandparents' house. It could just seem like something that is not out of nowhere, like, oh, geez, we got to load the car with everything in the pantry and get out of here in 5 minutes. That can
Hmm.
scare people, right? But if
Right.
you instead approach it with like, hey, you know, go get the bin, put this one in the car, go get your bag and put it in the car, just like we do when we go to grandma's house, right? Like that type of thing could make it a little less jarring.
Sure.
So also language, if you say something like this is the apocalypse, like using language like apocalypse or end of the world or things of that nature, it might sound silly, but like those words matter. If it's like, "This is
Hmm.
our family safety plan," like, "Oh, okay, we're doing this to
Right.
be safe." I'm instilled with confidence all of a sudden. Uh,
Uh,
it's not so direct on the surface, but, underneath, the way we, I guess, talk about these things is important. Because, excuse me, I'm sure, all of us are victim to this at some point. We doom scroll, right? We
oh,
go on
yeah.
Instagram, we scroll, and it's like, "Oh, man, look at all the bad things happening." And
Hmm.
over time, you're filled with this sense of impending
Yeah.
doom or dread because of all the tiny little things that you're encountering that are all negative. So I think if you make them all tiny little positive things instead, like with your emergency planning and with your family safety plan, then it doesn't seem so grim, especially if it's something that just seems like a temporary disturbance.
Yeah, for sure. In all of your history in preparedness and all of the things that you have tried to help people move through, what is
Mhm.
one thing that you frequently find that families forget about when it comes to preparing for a disaster?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the biggest thing people are missing is an actual decision trigger. So having a list of specific decision, almost like if this, then that. You make a list that
Sure.
says, if this thing happens, then I need to proceed to this plan. That's something we do in the military very often, or that I used to do is we would set conditions or we would do specific actions after a specific thing was observed. So you can have a tornado plan, but when are you actually doing it? Okay, there's a tornado warning. Is that your trigger? That might be a good
Mm,
one. But if there's a tornado warning and it's, I don't know, on the other side of the city, that really might not apply to you and it might not be a good use of your time. I'll circle back to decisions and triggers. Like, when do you actually proceed to the next step? And then beyond that, it would be the more broad collecting gear, but not actually making a plan or a way to
mhm.
use that gear, or even understanding how to use that gear. For example, if you have a water filter and you have it in a bag, but you've never used it before and you don't know
Right.
exactly like, which side do you suck out of? Oh, wait, no, that was the wrong way.
Yeah,
If you've never actually put water through it to know like this is how I actually use the thing, then does it really matter? Or do you even know like what type of situation you're going to be using it in? If uh, a lot of people don't have it organized in that way.
sure, yeah. But, I mean, there's something that's a lot of fun about collecting all of this gear, and maybe you see this
Yes.
Instagram ad where you're like, "Oh, yeah, I would totally be, fighting off a bear on a bridge in the middle of winter. I totally need this piece of gear for that." And then you're never just you don't know how to use it, and you don't know a real reason why you want to, other than the fact that it's just cool and it makes you happy.
Yeah. And that is part of it. It's slightly motivating to like say like, "Ooh, I've got this cool thing," and maybe that cool thing is the thing that pushes you over the edge. It's like, okay, fine, I'll learn how to use it, and you're potentially building a skill and building up a repertoire of like different things that you can use. But if it's not all tied together, it could just be a little disjointed.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, there's definitely there's a space for gear, there's a space for education, and there's a space for practice for sure. Um,
Yeah.
you know, Obviously like preparedness is not like a all at once sort of thing. So how do
Right.
you suggest that parents and families budget their time and budget their money to get prepared?
I really believe in starting with the plan before you do anything else.
Mm,
And before you can make a plan, you need to identify threats and hazards. So spend the time to do your homework on what will actually impact you. Right now, I live in Austin, Texas. The odds that I'm going to experience a blizzard, not really that likely. But I will say, the other day we had an ice storm. So
mhm,
although that's not quite a blizzard, we were not able to transportation not available. There was a lot of ice on the power lines. Some places lost power completely for days. And I know that
mhm.
there was an ice storm back in, I think, 2020, maybe 2021, that had a
Yeah,
similar impact.
yeah.
People lost
Mhm,
power for up to 10 days in my neighborhood.
mhm.
So that's that's the type of thing you have to look at. What am I going to specifically face in my area? So that's your first thing, your threat analysis. And then after that, you can start making a plan for those specific threats. And that's going to save you money and time because you are preparing for things that may actually impact you. I think that there are a lot of kind of shiny things out there, like EMPs, for example. I have a lot of people say, like, well, when the EMPs drop, like, I'm not going to be able to use XYZ. When in reality, an EMP is something that is highly, highly improbable, unlikely. If all the world systems work the way they're supposed to, and for the most part they do, behind the scenes, a lot of people don't see it, but an EMP is not something that we could really expect to face. Now, a power outage over the next year, I think a lot of people could say, yeah, I'll probably face a power outage. Maybe not super
Mhm.
extended, but it's still something that you wouldn't say, no way, I'm not gonna face a power outage. You could see it. It's conceivable. Same thing with severe weather, or potentially, like, say if you're in Florida, I bet you could think during hurricane season, I might just have to evacuate. It's something
Right.
that is conceivable. So start with the conceivable options, make plans for them, and then and only then see what gaps exist. And you can buy gear for those gaps specifically.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people would be surprised at the fact that what they have laying around their house, using it in a different way, in a different manner, will really get them through a lot of different situations. They don't necessarily have to have this really cool survival knife. You can literally just grab one from the kitchen and it'll mostly do the same thing. Won't look as cool,
Right.
but it'll mostly do the same thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah. One thing that has happened since, or just recently over the last few weeks, I felt like I knew all of the potential disasters that could happen in my area because I've been here for a while. But then all of a sudden, we just had like 3 earthquakes in 4 days, and
Oh,
ones that we could actually feel. And have to admit, like, that's not something that I had prepared for or really thought about before. And
yeah.
so it's unusual to, because I hear you talking about all this preparedness stuff and, researching what happens in your area, and then all of a sudden, hey, surprise, the earth is gonna open up and swallow you. So help me through the research aspect of this. How do I find out, maybe if I've just moved to a new area, how do I find out what really is going to happen where I am?
This is a really good question, and it actually ties back to a little project I'm working on the side. There's something called the National Risk Index that FEMA puts out. And if you look at it, it looks like a lot of data. So I downloaded the whole database to look at all the different things, and they're like, they have, I think it's 18 different emergencies or disasters that they track. It might be 20, but it's up there. It's in the high
Mhm.
teens.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot.
Everything from avalanches to tornadoes to
Mm.
floods, etc. And based on historical evidence and data collected in individual counties across the US, uh, you're given a threat index. I can't remember the exact name for it, but you're given a threat index. All that to say, if you were to go search the national risk, if you type in Google FEMA National Risk Index, you'll find a lot of information and data, but you won't necessarily find out exactly what the threat is for your county, which is where it would be valuable, right? So one thing I'm working on is turning that database into a an easy searchable index, or like, yeah, easily
Very cool.
searchable database that tells you, hey, you're in this county. Here is what FEMA says the national risk index is for your area based on XYZ. So that's a place I personally start. I like to
Yeah.
see, like, what does the data say? But back to the earthquakes, right? Maybe I'm not in a place that experiences a lot of earthquakes, but
Mhm.
hey, they just happened. Now what do I
Right.
do? Right. So the
Mhm.
I think that this is going to depend on how much extra homework you've done, because there's always the black swan type of event that
Mm.
could happen, something that's improbable, but hey, it happens. That's where I go back to breaking down emergencies into components. If there's an earthquake, perhaps power lines are down, you lose power. Okay, so then you can fall back on your power outage plan. I'm not sure if an evacuation, there's not really, I don't think an evacuation would necessarily be something you would do for an earthquake, but perhaps communication towers have fallen down, or maybe the internet is out. So you have some sort of backup communication plan. And beyond that, it's going to be checking in with people. Hey, are you okay? Like, if people are, somebody's at school, somebody's at work, somebody's at home, how do you talk to each other if the power's out and cell phones aren't working? I think that like, you could fall back to the basics for these things that happen that you don't already have a plan for. But again, the National Risk Index is something that is a concrete piece of evidence that you can go look up and see, what am I most likely to face in my area.
Very cool. I like that, and I like your idea of being able to search for, "Hey, what's happening around me?" I think that would be very useful, and I would absolutely encourage you to keep that project going and whatever it is you need to do to make that happen, because that sounds awesome. I know I would definitely use something like that. You
Yeah.
mentioned something, in your response that I thought was good that we needed to talk about. I am a Verizon customer, and so not too long ago, my phone just stopped working, and, fortunately for me, because I'm a preparedness-minded person, I had a, handheld radio in my car, popped on the radio and hit the local repeater in my area. I was like, hey, does anybody else have a Verizon phone? What's going on? And a
Mhm.
guy came back and told me that, oh, yeah, they have this huge outage all over the place and doesn't really make sense and all that. So it was really nice to have a backup form of communication. Walk me through what the average family's primary and backup communications may be.
All right. So I talk about this one a lot. So I apologize if this sounds very rehearsed, but there are three things that I would tell people to do. The first, and most of these aren't going to require you to have a license. And the first one is going to be have an internet system for messaging each other. So maybe the cell phone, if cell phone coverage is not working, for the most part, the internet backbone is still going to work. That's that's most likely. So if you can find a place to send an email, or if you can find a place to send a signal message, get Wi-Fi, that's probably step 1 for most people. You don't need anything else than what you already have, and that's the good part. You don't have to go buy other equipment, and you don't have to get a license. You basically just take your phone and say, "Hi, like, why don't I go connect to the Wi-Fi at the McDonald's I'm driving by real
Yep.
quick?" Connect
Hmm.
to the Wi-Fi, and then hopefully somebody else, is also connected to Wi-Fi, or they can also have the same plan, which is where planning comes in. If you lose communications, your first step could be, "I'm gonna go try to connect to Wi-Fi. I'm going to try to get into the internet backbone instead of relying specifically on cell service." The second one is going to be satellite messengers. You could buy
Yeah.
either Garmin devices, Spot devices, Zelio devices. There's a bunch of different brands, but the typical one that people think of is the Garmin InReach Mini 2, and they actually just
Hmm.
came out with the 3, so that's like a newer, more expensive model. But you basically just buy these devices and you pay for your subscription, which is the caveat there,
Hmm.
and you can send and receive messages from anywhere in the world as long as you have a clear view of the sky. The
Right.
problem is, even on sale, each device costs around $250. The step after that is, in my opinion, GMRS. You do have to get a license, but
Hmm.
it's $35 for 10 years. So for
Super easy. Yep.
$3.50 a year, yeah, it's your whole family's covered too. So that's a
Yeah.
that's a great
Everybody
thing.
in your
And you
household
don't,
is. Hmm.
yeah, and that's awesome. So I'll give a quick side story. There's a GMRS repeater about 3 miles from my house. And whenever I'm out in the barn working, because I work in the barn usually, I have my GMRS radio and it's just sitting on my desk and I'm just listening. I'm listening to who's
Hmm.
in the area. I'm listening to who's checking in. And whenever I hit the repeater, I can talk to people that are 20, 25 miles away. And so that's a pretty good radius because I'm very close to the middle of the circle. That would be kind of like the radius of my reach. I'll
Yeah.
talk to people on the east side of Austin, and I'm on the west side of Austin. So just with one radio and one repeater, that's covering almost, I would assume, millions of people, considering the size of that radius and which part of Austin it's touching. Maybe a
Sure.
million, but either way, like, that's a ton of people that can hit one repeater. If every person in your family has a GMRS radio and knows how to use it, so knows the call sign and knows
Hmm.
what channels, like, if I'm over here, I need to be on repeater station XYZ. I know I have to change the tone to this, or but those types of things require practice, and that's kind of where the practice makes perfect thing comes in. You can have this plan, you can hand somebody a radio, but if they don't know how to use it, uh, you know, it's useless. If I have to
Right.
change to the channel, but I don't know that there's a tone that I have to set, then
Hmm.
then that's then it's useless. You can say, "Hey, this thing doesn't work." It's like, actually, there's an extra step, which is where the planning and practice comes in. But those are the three things I would recommend to people looking for communication uh, backup plans. Beyond that, you can get crazy. You can go as deep into this as you want. I'm a ham radio operator myself, KJ5 ACE, but I I don't expect everybody else to go through the process of getting licensed and tinkering with all sorts of different, you know, radio topics or different facets of the radio hobby.
Oh yeah, because you can. I mean, it's a rabbit hole. It's its own thing.
Yeah.
It can be something that you do for preparedness, or it can become your next favorite hobby. So it's just kind of like whatever it is for you, whatever you like about it. And if you do get into radio, you're probably going to end up buying, I don't know, 13 or 14 of them just because you think it's fun. Going back to that whole, I want to buy gear because it looks fun.
Yeah.
But then you just hand them out to your neighbors. That's what I keep saying to my wife. Oh, if something goes wrong, we'll just hand one off to a neighbor. Now we have another neighbor that we can include in this, right? That's
Yeah.
my excuse anyway.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
This is to
got it.
help people, okay?
Right, right. I'm trying to be good here. Um, so what are some of the popular tools that people need to have with them for just everyday preparedness?
Right. So the first one I like to start with is, drum roll please, the written plan. I think that it ties everything together, and it's the thing that you rehearse off of. If you have the written plan, then you have something to fall back to. But actual kit, what can we actually have on us? For me, the biggest one is like communications equipment. So
Mhm,
can you communicate? Whenever my wife is out and about, there is a Garmin Mini in the car, in the glove compartment.
mhm.
So that's something that she keeps with her, because we want to be able to communicate. Another thing, this one might sound obvious and boring, but a headlamp. I can't tell you how many times I have used a headlamp. It could
Mhm,
be, it's just countless. Probably at least once a week, I'm using a headlamp for something.
mhm.
And I could totally see that being very useful in a power outage. And in the past, I've used a headlamp in a power outage. You get to use both hands. It seems simple, but it's great. You don't have to put a flashlight in your mouth. You don't have to, carry things with one hand. It's a game changer. It seems simple, but it is, I would say, 100% the thing you need,
Yeah.
is a headlamp. Other than that, let's just face it, we're all kind of dependent on technology these days.
Mhm.
A lot of stuff that we do has technology tied into it. So most of these devices require power. We need a power backup plan for just about everything. Do you need to keep your phone charged? Probably so. So a backup power bank. I keep a Goal Zero. I think it's uh, 20,000 milliamp hour,
Mhm.
or
It's a
something
big
like
one.
that. It's always plugged into a charger in the barn, which is where I work.
Mhm.
And I do use it occasionally, but that one is just like it's always topped up, it's always ready to go. And then I have several other like 10,000 milliamp hour banks, like some in go bags, some are spread throughout the house. Like I need my power, okay?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
uh, so that's another thing. Because ultimately, what you can get out of that power, your phone has a ton of tools on it. A lot of people don't know
Mhm.
this, but Google Maps can be used offline completely. You can
Mhm.
download Google Maps for your area. You can have, I don't know the exact. It looks like a sectional chart, like it's a rectangle, so it's not like a circle. So there's no specific radius, but I can cover a multi-hundred-mile stretch between me and and some family members north of me. So if that gives you any kind of idea of the amount of, on the size of a map that you can download just
That's
in
pretty good.
one file, yeah, it's very useful. So that's one of those things, like, even if you think, "Oh, like, my phone's gonna be useless in an emergency," I will
Mhm.
push back against that so hard. Unless we're dealing with the EMP, which again, EMPs, very unlikely, then you still have so many tools that you can use at your disposal. You have a flashlight on your phone. That's pretty cool. You have maps on your phone. GPS still works even if you
Yep,
don't
compass
have
still
cell
works.
signal.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's a lot of things you can use that phone for. You can save all sorts of important PDFs and files and backup plans. And I'll give a quick plug here. I believe in this so much that I've spent the past year developing an app specifically that stores all these types of things on your phone, because I'll do a quick backstory here. For our contingency planners that we sell, a lot of people said, "Hey, like, this is a good concept, but something bad happened to me, and guess what? I didn't have my planner on me. Yeah, I used it to
Mhm.
practice, but I didn't actually have my checklist." Well, you can store your checklist on your phone because people always have their phone on them.
Right.
That's just the way things are these days. You don't even have to use an app. You can use notes on your phone. You can make
Mhm.
your own little checklists. As long as everybody has the same thing and you're playing off the same sheet of music, you'll be good to go. So, phone, power, headlamp. Beyond that, I would say the thing I should have said first, but I didn't, is first aid kit and
Yeah.
first aid
Mhm.
training. That's the type of thing that'll actually like reach out and bite you. What'll
Mhm.
kill you the fastest if you bleed out, if you don't have air, those types of things, will get you very quickly than you can get out your phone and figure out what you're. Yeah. Oh, what do I do? So first aid training is probably the most important thing that I could say here. That'll get you the quickest. Uh,
Yeah.
One thing I will say is, like, what I don't do for everyday preparedness is,
Mhm.
like, massive amounts of food storage, and I could say that
Right.
I'm kind of like I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum of I know a lot of people with like, "I have, 3,000 days worth of food stored for my entire family,"
Mhm.
and I'm I don't have that because I don't think it's necessarily very practical to store that much food, but that's
Right.
one of those things where, I think for everyday preparedness, I know it's maybe controversial, but I just don't think it's that practical to have massive amounts of food storage. Some is fine, of course, having a fully stocked
Sure.
pantry, totally for it, but, like, having my entire garage filled with MREs, that's
Mm,
not the path
yeah.
I'm gonna go.
Okay. Yeah, no, I get that. I do. You just kinda want something that's gonna get you, through a couple of days until, the power comes back on. And I do like that you
Yeah,
talked about, the first aid training and having a first aid kit. It's not enough to, just have the $20, box that you get from Amazon. It's you gotta know what's in it, how to use it, where it's stored, all that sort of stuff, to make
right.
sure that you can actually respond to what it is. I mean, there's more than just Band-Aids in there, right?
I hope so.
Yeah, there should be. There should be a tourniquet and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, because if it's just
Yeah.
Band-Aids, that's not a very good, first aid kit. So, Sam, thank you so much for, being on the show. Tell us, where we can find you online and a little bit more about Mad Gear.
Yeah, of course. You can find me at Mad Gear Company on Instagram. We make YouTube videos. We have a Facebook and we have a website, madgear.shop. You can also email us at info@madgear.shop. I'm very active on Instagram. So if you DM me on Instagram, there's a good chance I'll respond within one day. Email, uh, I'd say good luck. I'm not exactly very organized in my email, but if you hit me up on Insta, there's a good chance I'll respond. And as far as Mad Gear, we're continuing to try to build more and more emergency preparedness tools. And right now, we're really focused on planning. We're building educational materials for planning right now. That's not out quite yet, and we are bringing our classic OG contingency planner back. It went away for a while due to supply chain constraints, but
Mhm.
we've worked out the kinks and it's coming back. So that's something that everybody can look forward to. Should be out by the summer if everything goes as planned.
All right, man. Well, I hope that it does. I appreciate you talking with me today. I've learned a lot from you, but you and I are actually not done talking. We're going to have a special bonus discussion coming up on my favorite, most frustrating thing in my life right now,
Oh,
Meshtastic.
okay. Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about that here. So I hope you guys can join us for that. But thank you, Sam. I appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, of course. Likewise. I appreciate your time.